were to create like the ideal player, I mean, how much, how much spin would they be hitting? Like, what type of grips would they have? What type of game would they have?
Yeah.
Like, I'm curious about your insights into the like, the ideal player to be able to handle, today's game.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think you got to start with the serve and return, and I think you'd have to have a serve that's a weapon. It doesn't have to be a huge, it doesn't have to be a huge bomb, but you have to be able to hit spots. You have to be very solid on the second serve. I think you need a distinct weapon from the ground, and the forehand seems to be the easiest one to generate pace and spin.
Mhm.
You'd want a player that's rock solid on return, that misses very few return mistakes. And then you need somebody who's comfortable coming forward and looking to transition and put pressure on. But, I think something in general that I come across all the time with players of all levels is that when they're behind the baseline, even really good players, they still hit really low on the net. And it's something that it's really common, surprisingly common with good players. And it means they make more mistakes, they drop more balls short, and then when the ball ends up on the other player's racket, it's more in their strike zone because it's not rising and pushing them back. So that's something that I've just noticed. The margins are probably not high enough with most of the players that I train.
Gotcha, Joel. And does that necessitate to that we have that we hit just with more spin, we hit with more top spin, or can you actually even achieve that if you hit a flat ball normally?
Yeah, so I mean, I think trajectory wise, no good player hits a flat ball, a totally flat ball.
Mhm.
They all have spin. It's just more of the trajectory. I think when people say a flat shot, to me that is a trajectory thing. It's not a spin thing because you can't control the ball without spin. But
Mhm.
I think the best players use their legs to get a lot of power from the ground, and they're able to play above the net when they're behind the baseline in order to push their opponent back, and that way they don't have to go to smaller targets on the outside. As I think we all know, we've all played somebody who probably hits down the middle really deep, and it's very hard to do anything with that ball. So targets are huge, but it definitely makes it easier when you use more spin. It's very tough to be consistently hitting deep when you have a flatter trajectory.
Got it, Joel. Yeah, I was especially curious about, your take on how much spin we should be hitting and all that. Because I think I remember, I forgot if it was a commentator or a fellow player that they were commentating on Mackie McDonald, and they said, "Oh, like I think he has a really good future on the tour, and especially because he hits the ball really flat." So I wasn't really sure, why that
Yeah,
could be the case. Do you have any
yeah.
thoughts on that?
I think if you step up inside the baseline and the ball is higher, you can flatten it out.
Mm-hmm.
It's situational, though. I mean, you could say Del Potro hits a flat ball, and he definitely does when the ball is above the net. But you slice the ball down low below the net, he's going to have to roll it. It's not possible to hit it flat. So I think that is more a trajectory thing than a spin thing. And I think sometimes players, when they watch TV, they see how hard these guys hit. Their only chance to hit similar speeds is to flatten the ball out, and it's just not as consistent, and they can't hit their spots as well. So when the ball is there to be hit, it's above the net, you're inside the court, you do have to drive it. But I definitely think when we think of flat, it's more trajectory than it is about the spin on the ball.
Gotcha, Joel. So, I mean, with that in mind, where we do need to definitely be able to flatten out the ball as well as hit spin on
Yep.
the ball, are there any negatives to the Western grip, especially long term? Maybe if as you get older, is that maybe too extreme of a grip for players overall, or do you think that's still a viable option?
No, I mean it can be. I think it's from I had a Western grip when I was very young, and it's something I'm very glad that I changed because I ended up
Mm.
being 6'6", so that's a problem when the ball's down low. But I'll tell you where there's a real weakness on a Western grip, and that's an out wide serve. Out wide return on the juice side. When that ball gets
Mm.
out wide, it's very very difficult for a guy with a Western grip to get the ball back in play. And also a lot of times they have to change to a much more extreme backhand grip. So there are pros and cons to all grips. Um, but I don't teach Western. I start players in semi-Western and let them gravitate towards Eastern or a little bit over towards semi-Western. But it does make it a little bit harder to drive the ball when it's there to be hit. So But it does make it easier to get spin early on.
Yeah, that's a great insight because you made me think of myself because hopefully my opponents aren't listening, but when I get sliced out wide, it's tough for me sometimes
Yeah,
because I have it's like a little tilted more towards the western.
yeah,
So for my forehand, so when I have an out wide return, it's kind of tough. I have to kind of like flick it almost sometimes.
yeah.
So it is pretty difficult as well, and those low balls also are tough too. So that's really good stuff there. Um, so in regards to like, say if a player they have, a few technical flaws in their in a particular stroke, like what's your approach for going in and fixing that stroke to make it technically sound?
I mean, yeah. The first thing is like, what's happening with it? Is it just hemorrhaging points? Is it a real problem that needs fixing? Sometimes it can be a decent technique, and they just need to manage their game better. So you see a lot of players, they want to hit their backhand just like their forehand, but the backhand makes a ton of errors. So they need to make a change in how they approach the strategy from that side of the court. But if there's a real glaring technical deficiency, then you have to go and spend some time restructuring it, and that can take a bit of time. Or you need an option if you're going to still compete. So if let's say it's a backhand, then you need to have a slice that can. If you have problems with the topspin, then you've got to have a slice that you can use as a substitute. But I think it's really important that if there is a glaring problem, that you go to fix it, and if there's not, maybe they just need a different way to think about how they're using that stroke on the court.